'Twas the night before Christmas, when all through the parliamentary house not a creature was stirring, not even a pesky communist scouse. And in such darkness, the English Devolution and Community Empowerment Bill was passed. Hello and happy Christmas. Welcome to the Sisyphus Complex Solution Christmas present. Well, I'll also inform you of Christmas future and how you might be able to redeem yourselves if you want to avoid the ghastly vision that they have planned for us. So get yourselves a glass of Christmas cheer and let us begin. Like a nice whiskey and ginger for Christmas. So, this is the English Devolution and Community Empowerment Bill, which most, if not all of you, will probably have never heard of. And this is basically the reason why your local elections are being postponed, despite the bill not having been passed yet. Legal? It's also the reason why your local councils are already placing limits on the age of your cars, commercial cars particularly, taxis and so forth, despite the bill not yet having been passed. Legal? This is a little bit of a snippet of the present, and I'll return to it a little bit later on. But let's also have a little bit of a snippet of the future. No general election in 2029. Maybe. Humbug and nonsense, you might say. Well, House of Lords reform and constitutional crisis, anyone? Oh yes, these legal little piglets, where those who have been me for some time will remember that there is a backroom staff of over 3,000 of these little porkers. See the book teaser link if you want some information on this. And they're all sort of busying away at the trough, all to inform you that their dismissal of democracy is done in the name of democracy. So, I'm sure you'll say, I didn't vote for that. There'll be a big cry of people saying, I didn't vote for that. Perhaps not. But 9.7 million useful idiots that never read manifestos did. And here I'll give you a quick quibble, really, in terms of legal and legalese. Immediate, it says, not follow later in the Parliament. Possible little important piece of semantics, perhaps. So these are some glimpses. If I can keep me ciggy alight, where I've also indicated the error of their ways. Hopefully you've caught that little bit of nuance and some not so nuanced direct. Because these are people that are really not even remotely concerned about any level of accountability. And so how might we go about redeeming ourselves in realistic terms, rather than just through constantly posting trite little memes? Well, here's where people that may have been with me for quite some time are probably going to think, oh my God, he's saying it again. Because I am going to be repeating some stuff. Stuff that I've been saying since I believe, around 2020 to 2021. But not to worry. Various things that I've said before. I'll put this all together relatively within one little gift. And obviously I have to make this specific to the UK, so apologies to any of the viewers from elsewhere, but you'll kind of get the point as well. So the first thing that everybody needs to be doing, once again, is creating your local network based on your constituency. Don't try to go beyond that border. And the reason why you don't want to do that is because you want this to be manageable. Even on a constituency level, it can get to the point where you're not exactly going to be sitting there with a server at home, put it that way. There are ways and means of doing this, but just on the understanding that you need to keep things manageable. Because if you get lucky, you may at some point find some other networks that you can come together with at the appropriate points to form a larger national force, but your main point is to remain constituency based. If you are starting from scratch, the point of this chart is to show how the numbers can grow exponentially on the basis of an old chainmail calculation. So what this means in simple terms is you find 2 or more people, then they find 2 or more people, and then by the 5th cycle you would have reached 65,536 people. More than enough. So if you was to make the target 3 people, by stage 5 you've nearly equated to the entire voting population of the UK. That's as an example. The reason why you'd aim for this slightly higher number, because like I say, you don't need to have the entire nation on your mailing list. You're aiming for a slightly higher number simply because you want to be able to mitigate for those that are unable to reach that target of 3 or whatever additional number it is that you set. And then you will also have people that you probably don't really want. So you have to have at least some sort of a standard as to who you'll accept, not least of all because you absolutely will have certain disruptors that will try to enter. You need to have the sense to weed that out. No socialists. You can develop this network as a mailing list. You can also develop it on the basis of local meetups, and I'll explain a couple of other sort of additional strategies beyond this shortly. Now, the figures at the top are the claimed total population, possibly. And then below that, the key figures are from the last election. So keep on top of the actual numbers. But it's just to give you an idea of the size of network that you'll be going to need to gather. So check the data for your constituency for accuracy, because these are average numbers now. And if you need to ask me for the data specific to your constituency based on the last election, then let me know, because I do have it for the entire country. So as an average, you're looking at a seat size of around 74,000 voting age people. That is obviously going to increase now that they've brought in 16-year-olds. This is why I'm saying this is from the last election. Pay attention to what it might be going forward. You'll have an average winning number of votes being around 19,000. So that's the kind of size of network that you'd be aiming for. And this would be normally enough to get around about a 25% gain of the voting population. Now, the thing to say about that is that if you do have 25% of the voting population, that will be enough to support a winning candidate. And what you can do with that is within your ranks choose a candidate of your own. You don't necessarily have to rely on any of the usual suspects. If you have basically a voting block of these kinds of numbers, it basically puts you in charge, and then, like I say, you don't have to worry about some party promising you something and then literally ignoring you afterwards. If you don't manage to achieve this sort of number, don't worry about it too much. Just grow as best you can, and just do it on the basis of an understanding that the more you get, the more power you hold. Even if you only get, say, a couple of thousand, that would be a voting block that would make any candidate concerned as to whether they had your support or not. In the event that you do come across people from other constituencies, like I say, work with them, but ensure that those people that you do come across are then getting involved in forming their own network as well. If you need to have any sort of backwards and forwards and advice with each other over this, and the best way to achieve it, or any other kind of assistance that can be provided, then do so. The important thing there really though is that if you can develop that kind of relationship with people from other constituencies, this is going to be helping to form the relationships, because when you've created your own managing team, you're then also going to be looking towards having this sort of wider preparation for running the nation. And so everybody's going to be able to need to understand what it is they're actually going to be voting for. If we was to have a whole series of competent independent candidates supported by a local network, you're all going to have to work together in some form, one way or the other anyway. So if that can be done as you're going forward, perfect. I'm not suggesting in any way, shape or form that this is easy. I know, trust me. I use this chart in order to give some impetus and some encouragement. I don't suggest it's some kind of a miracle. You send a couple of letters to people and suddenly you have exactly what you wanted. It doesn't work that way. But it is possible, mathematically. So the main point here, and that is just to demonstrate that it's not an insurmountable task. When you will have people that will tell you can't do this kind of thing, yes you can. All you need to be thinking about realistically is creating an achievable goal in terms of gathering your numbers. Because the real sort of complexity of what you're going to do with all of those people within that network, that's to come once you've gathered a reasonable number of people. The examples that I can give where people can understand that an independent candidate is indeed possible and not something to be ignored is you at the last election had basically what was called the Gaza caucus, the Muslim areas that seem to suddenly decide that if they all get together, guess what they can do? They can vote in an independent candidate. Even Rupert Lowe has demonstrated. I know that when he was voted in, he was with Reform at the time, but he's then subsequently formed effectively what is an independent party for that single constituency, and he's already polling at 44% of the vote. That's effectively the same thing that I'm proposing, but just with a more formal name for that particular seat. all in all, it works out at the same thing. So yes, these things are indeed possible. When it comes down to the structure as to how you operate, hopefully this example doesn't look too odd, but suffice to say that if you're going to be a competent representation for your constituency, and then obviously beyond that the nation, you'll need to formulate some form of organisational structure. And this is literally based off of one that I originally promoted, because yes, I have been promoting this exact kind of proposition since the times when I was suggesting it to the Doctors for COVID ethics groups in 2021. It's not a standard sort of corporate style of structure, but it does effectively serve the same principle. So in order for your voting bloc to hold the greatest threat possible, you need to find amongst your number initially the competent individual that you could put forward in any election. And this can be expanded into, it will actually need to be expanded into councillors as well. So don't only just collect your constituency data, collect your ward data as well. Your representatives will need to provide, well, you'll need to provide them with a support team, because if you're going to do things on an actual competent basis, anticipating that one person can do all things for all people, that's not the real world. So you need the support team. And the teams that feed into it can be created from within your network. This is quite an important part of an effective network, because then you're getting the people that you're communicating with involved in the actual process as well. You're giving them some impetus as to why they should be coming into your network, and what can they just provide some assistance and get to understand exactly what's taking place, rather than just being on the peripheral and handing over a name. You'll get a certain amount of that, but that's not the ideal situation. You want to be able to have things open to people to become active within it. Now, if you did happen to get around this 19,000 people, obviously it would be too much to have that many people fully engaged in the network. If you can figure out how to do that, all power to you. But just be in a position where you don't turn away any offers of help, because there will always be work for anybody to do if you understand the level of complexity of the kind of machine that you're going to be going up against. So the more people that are prepared to help, consider it on the basis of the less burden it is on each of the members that are part of the support team. Like I said, obviously, again, this is just an example, and if anybody does need some help creating a formal structure, I suspect you'll have somebody within your network that does know how to do this anyway. And obviously, so long as not everybody in the country starts bothering me. But if you're completely stuck as to how you actually go about doing these kind of structures, then yes, you can drop me a line. Now, certainly don't just rest on your laurels of developing the voting bloc and getting the support or the use of opportunities, because there will be opportunities that come with a network, and that will involve the likes of private entities. Essentially what you need to be doing there is, once you have the numbers, and you need to be exploring all of the different aspects that you need to be taken into consideration. If there's any form of sort of local social media, certainly go out and use that. obviously the larger platforms, and that you can have your own groups within bigger platforms as well. You don't have to have it open to the entire public, but just use them accordingly. If you can find the rare lawyer, one that doesn't demand that you hand over your entire life's earnings in order for them to provide you some advice that you then find out is completely pointless. But if there is a lawyer that is of some substance and you can get them involved, do so. But like I say, on the understanding that even if you do have legal assistance, be sure to back this up with researchers. Because if there's one thing that I do know about lawyers is that they don't always, shall we say, they don't always know the full extent of the laws that they're supposed to be advising you upon. So have people do the research as well. I've got sport listed on the page as well, because this is a really good way of getting a larger group together in one hit, if it's available to you. And generally speaking, there is some kind of sporting organisation that has like a large supporters group or something along those lines. If you can get in there without being too pushy about it, make use of it. I mean, the one thing about that is that if you've got a local football team, for example, that's got any decent level of support, and you can gain access to those people, this would not only give you good numbers, but you'll frighten the living daylights out of whoever it is that you're coming up against as well. And the activists in the area will certainly be a lot less inclined to give you any problems, shall we say. But various ways of dealing with things as they rise their heads. Businesses are always a very good way of gaining numbers as well, because naturally, if you've got a business involved, then that means you have access to all the employees. But beyond that, you absolutely also need to be comprehending firsthand what your local economy looks like. So you're going to need to understand what are the core businesses in your area. And they will obviously be able to provide you with a lot of feedback as well, in terms of assisting with some of your policy developments. Because there'll be a whole range of regulations and things that you just never heard of that can all be advised through. If you have all of these things in place, you will see a whole range of parties, the usual suspect parties. If they saw you having that level of voting block, that level of comprehensive structure, I guarantee they would basically just wave the white flag, because you would have the numbers already. It's already done. Now, I know that people tend to say, like I say, just getting the voting numbers is enough. You don't need to go overboard with doing things, but like I say, if you don't know what to do after being elected, you're essentially laying the groundwork for causing more damage than you thought you was going to be curing. So understand you probably won't get a second chance at something like that. So this is why you need to be developing this competence. I do use the word competent for a very good reason. An additional piece of advice is that you do not need to form this into a party like Rupert Lowe did if you don't want to. And the thing about that, and the advantage with that, is it does dissuade people that if they have to have a formal membership to a party, because then you're talking about membership fees, and you're putting some kind of an obligation onto these people. Whereas if you just develop your network, first and foremost, you've just you've reduced a lot of your overall costs in terms of limiting what you can do, because you're having to then register with the Electoral Commission and so forth. But because the costs that will be involved then will be whatever is required in order for you to be able to maintain that network through your communications. There are wise ways of doing this as well, that don't come with any costs at all. Again, any assistance with that, ask the questions. But you can just sort of put up an independent candidate where they register for the council or for the MP, whatever it may be. On the basis of that independent candidate alone, you'll need to have a couple of people in support for the registration process, but you do not have to be a party. And all of those costs are pushed to one side. It may also be the case that your network might determine that a party representative does actually concede to what it is that your network would actually want to see done, and where you'll know that they have conceded and that they will do exactly what it is that you want them to do, and make sure that there's a personable relationship there as well. But do the one thing that no MP or councillor has in place to date: have them sign a contract with you. Have your demands put in the contract so that the contract is with you, the constituents, not with the party. This is an option that will be open to you. If they are a member of a party and they do say, right, they go back to the party headquarters and say, well, the constituents want me to sign a contract, they may say, no, you're not allowed to do that. Then that representative has the choice then, don't they? Do they want to stick with that party, or do they want to actually represent you? And make sure that that contract has the accountability sections within it, so that should they refuse to do what you have asked them to do, they can be removed from office, external from standard parliamentary procedures, which I will go into. In terms of the functionality of your network, again, this is just an example wiring map of how an organisation can function, and whereby the national and local policy developments give examples of the kind of the work packages that you can put together for your team to work on. This is very much dependent on the expertise you can gather from within your voting block, and my personal preference here is that you genuinely do start to look to reverse all of the problems that exist on both the local and national level, including reversal of a great many areas of legislation that are causing the problems. I do recommend that you actually do understand that any form of socialism is genuinely the mental disease that is causing all of the woes that everybody is suffering from. And it is indeed that has led us down to the path that we should be looking to step away from. If you need an example, just think Milei in Argentina. You don't necessarily have to copy Milei in Argentina, by the way, because I'm still a little bit suspicious there, but you get the idea. Read some Hayek and some Mises from the Mises Institute and so forth, you understand. Well, whilst I don't want to tell anybody at all really in that as to precisely what to do, because this is not about falling into the trap of somebody creating yet another ideology, what any specific area needs might I mean, that will probably not be suited to the knowledge of another particular individual in another area. So you have to try to focus the knowledge base where you are, because that will gain the best support. But there are things that people like myself can help with in terms of certain areas around, like what the national proposition looks like, and you can understand why I can provide that kind of information because of the government audit that I've been conducting, which you can see in all of the videos that I've produced up till now, of which there will still be more to come, obviously. I can say that I do not recommend any uneducated bulldozer approach, with the example being the essentially quite a lot of people in the commentariat, and the main example that I will give really here, and that is how a great many people say, in order to start solving the problems for the nation, includes things like cutting the welfare bill. Straight away, cut the welfare bill. The reason why I'm suggesting that one in particular, and largely because it is such a prominent suggestion that I keep seeing from various people, is that you could then be targeting those people that you really do need to have on side. Now, naturally, when you're looking at something like welfare, it's absolutely fair to turn around and say, right, people that shouldn't even be receiving any kind of welfare, yeah, we can figure out who those people are. You can look towards the obvious examples of anybody that's here illegally, or the immigrants that have been here for a couple of years, and that's like, why are you on benefits? That kind of situation, that is all fair enough. But unless you understand the command and control economy that we have, and we do have one, and the kind of barriers that have been implemented in support of that, this is one of the key reasons why the nation has 25% of working age people inactive, so either unemployed or inactive completely, off the radar. You don't really want to be creating enemies of the very people that you want to be bringing as active in your favour. A great many of those people will be in this position whereby, yeah, you say, you're going to cut my welfare, but where I live, there are no jobs. What do you expect me to do? These are the kinds of things where I want people to be sensible in their area and to look at what is actually required on the ground before giving way to some ignoramus from miles away saying, oh, just cut the welfare bill. Do things on a practical level. I know that will still sound like something that is a socialist style approach, but you're looking towards diagnosis and then providing cure so that you can move away from those kinds of things. If you've managed to put in the policies that change the situation, that frees up the market for businesses to be able to flourish, then those jobs can be created and you don't have to worry so much about the welfare bill. Then you can be a bit stricter on people that just refuse. The way things stand at the moment, a great deal of the issue is not the fault of the people that find themselves in that position. So, a little bit of empathy there. This is the main thing really, and that is that you have to release the economy before you start leaving anybody destitute. It should be a basic moral responsibility really that you should be fighting for on their behalf. The strategy, media, law, campaigning should be pretty obvious, and again that'll be down to your teams to be able to determine what it is that they're going to do at each level. The only thing that I'd add here is that the noises that you make and the campaigning that you do should be based on solutions that people can understand. Everything that you're doing here, and that is supposed to be creating a narrative and an understanding that you know the details behind that narrative, that is presenting a better alternative, that you will be making things better for everyone. We know that most politicians say that they will do this, that and the other, and promise you the earth, but we know that they don't deliver. You have to be the ones that make that difference, to say, we can deliver this, and we know why we can deliver this, because here is the idea that will solve that problem. So people can scrutinise you. And if you get scrutiny, and you can stand up to scrutiny, it means you've got the right idea. These kinds of messages can be as snappy or complex as the source of exposure requires. But like I say, it must be ready for that level of scrutiny. Anybody asking you any questions, don't make any statements where you're just unable to actually explain to anybody what it means. The business side of things is one where I do suggest a bit of a unique approach, because this is going to be, like I say, this is going to be a part of your new economy, and where a great deal of the negative impact is felt from the current regime. We need to understand how they can be helped, not least because they'll be like I said, they'll be the first port of call for solving that 25% of inactivity. They probably will be, again, a bit of a repetition here and that, because it is quite an important thing for you to understand. They are going to be a good source, not only of advice as to what might be required, but they could be a source for you to have any funding that might be required as well. Like I said, don't be, because you want to ideally be operating on the basis of not having any great level of expenditure, and certainly not passing that impact on to the people that are part of your network. So don't be too pushy or too greedy on anything like that. Make sure that if there are any costs that are required at all, see if the businesses and that can just offer with us a small donation. Make sure that you budget accordingly. Don't put yourself forward to some great advertising campaign that then you don't have the money for. Make sure everything is in place beforehand. Utilize as many free resources as you possibly can. If you've got the businesses on your side as well as the people, again, game over. They won't be able to defeat that kind of voting bloc. So when your work package group is looking at the economy, you, like I say, look to those regulations that will assist. Which ones, the regulations you need to be, which barriers you need to be knocking down. Get that feedback loop moving so that you do understand what is going to be needed. Within reason. Obviously there are certain people that want to have certain types of barriers that are based on actual quality. There won't be too many of them, to be absolutely honest. But if there are any barriers that are there particularly for quality purposes and for safety purposes, ensuring that it actually does mean that, then obviously you can turn around and say, well, hold on a minute, mate, no, we're not going to touch that. Be reasonable. So will all of this kind of thing take a long time? Well, here's the reason why I don't think it will, despite the fact that I know for myself, having given this sort of stuff a bit of a go. I mean, even in the last year I gave it a little bit of a go, not too much. I had to move off to do something else, but the more that people know that something is just absolutely wrong, things are just really going in a bad direction, and I think more and more people do realise that. I think the more open to competent alternative, they're going to be receptive to that. Nobody's going to expect you to be perfect. You know, when you're putting things together from scratch and that, yeah, you will have hiccups along the way. And we're certainly not expecting anybody to have this weird notion of some kind of utopia that only exists in the heads of delusional people. Utopia by definition doesn't exist. And it's highly likely that there's you're going to have people that you will be able to bring forward that understand things like project management. That is a term that you may want to try to keep in mind, because people that understand the project management processes, they'll be able to help you to formulate things so that it is a coherent package, and then that the people that you need to be persuading to come on board that would be normally a little bit more difficult. So like I say, people like that own the businesses and so forth, they'll become a little bit more confident in what it is that you have to offer. Whatever you do though, if you do understand something about project management, or you come across somebody that does, you also then understand that you don't really bother with, in terms of putting in charge, don't bother with some newbie kid that has literally just got his PM qualification. Here's my piece of paper from the Project Management Institute. And I say that for a very particular reason, because a great deal of that qualification is based on vast amounts of irrelevance. It's just get a competent manager, somebody that knows what applies to what process. Again, I know the commentariat often claim managerialism as being a big part of the problem. You'll have people turning around and saying that the likes of Starmer and so forth, the reason why they're a problem and they're so completely willfully ignorant to other people is because they've got this managerialism style of approach. That really isn't the problem. It's the ideology behind that that's the problem from them. And a failure to understand that some kind of managed, organised structure is going to have to be the bedrock of how you actually put this together. Failing to do that will result in a failure to be able to present a competent alternative. It's what you're aiming to do that matters, and understanding that your opponents are also very highly managed. So then the next part of things is that, do you have to wait for elections in order for you to be able to make best use of your network? Or will you be dissuaded from elections being cancelled because they've determined to say so on the basis of bills that haven't even been fully passed yet, or changes to the House of Lords that were supposed to have been immediate but then get left conveniently to the end? No, you don't have to wait for any of these things. The moment that you're ready, start acting. I've spoken of this one many times, and I recently did a video on my smaller Moroi appropriation channel, where we do have to understand the basics of the code of conduct, and then the charge of misconduct in public office, which applies to all areas of public service, from MPs down to local councillors and everything in between. I've provided a bunch of relevant links in the description for this sort of stuff. The route of complaint will differ. So at MP level, if you're making a competent case, you're then going to have to make that complaint to the Parliamentary Standards Commissioner. And a cooperating range of voting blocks can be utilised to put the kind of pressure on the Commissioner for them to recommend then the prosecution go to the CPS. But to be clear, you do not go directly to the police or the CPS for this kind of thing. You use the appropriate routes. For my part, dishonesty is a core part of the code of conduct under what is known as the Nolan principles, or the 7 principles of public office. This does become a slightly skewed interpretation via the parliamentary commissioner, but again, pressure can still apply. And at a local council level, you can certainly enable this route to recourse, but obviously it's up to each voting block to make a very well thought out and legitimate case. Don't make any spurious accusations. Don't just turn around and say, oh, this person, I think they lied, therefore. That's not good enough. The main thing that I would also suggest that you include in any kind of complaint of this nature is that you're looking for something that has, and because you're going to find many examples of this, I would imagine, there will be evidence of literal harms as a result of the claim. Now, what you can do as an example for this is complaints around anything to do with the climate initiatives and then energy. And the reason why you can do that is because anybody that might have voted for certain actions that has then resulted in genuine physical harm, and I can say genuine physical harm because I know from just recent figures, you're talking about in the range of 128,000 people per year in the UK dying from energy poverty. So anybody that's signed on for the kind of policies that support that outcome, that is a legitimate complaint. It's how you formulate the complaint then. Once you've actually managed to achieve some kind of charge, and this is dealing with MP level, the conviction can then ensure your ability to be able to recall that MP. So it's always a bit of a process. In order for you to be able to go forward with something like this, you then need to be able to back that up with at least 10% of the local electorate signing to say, yes, we want to recall. But then if you've got a voting block of around 25%, you're well within this benchmark. If you're not, but you've got a good portion of that 10%, maybe just do it anyway, and then campaign for the remainder. Just the initial kind of stages and notification that this kind of an accountability process is being initiated, it can see those MPs really get the jitters. And once again, especially, I mean, if somebody has managed to do it to one MP, that's going to make everybody else really nervous. And you can have your demands ready. You can have your contract ready to back it all up. Because I say, in case you're not aware of this, MPs have no contracts. This is something that you can start to put on the table. A large part of the disdain that the parliamentary system has quite clearly developed towards the people that they're supposed to be representing is because they don't have that kind of accountability on them. It's one of the reasons why I'm with party, not with people. You need to start reversing that trend and putting in some proper legal recourse for ignoring you. I said these types of things and that end up being pressure tactics as well, paths to potential removal, all at the same time. So it's something that you can do if you want to be able to literally get rid of them, but it's also something that you can use to really frighten the life out of them at the same time and get any potential candidate in your area to really start paying attention to what it is that you want. An additional tactic which is based on sort of a nationwide campaign of recall, assuming a level of success that turns from the numbers within Parliament, is that if you've managed to set off this campaign and you've removed that many people from their seats and put your people in place, but they're still clinging on, well, what you can then do is push to a next stage and revisit 1979, and you can force a vote of no confidence and the collapse of government and forcing a general election. There's various steps that you can push towards. All of these things are going to be happening overnight, of course not, but it's at least giving you a genuine route of strategy to be able to start making things happen. Obviously, when it comes down to votes of no confidence, it then becomes a different situation in terms of local level, because bizarrely, and there are conversations taking place at local level around this, but as things stand, the chair of the council can literally just ignore you. Even if everybody in the entire constituency turned around and said, that particular councillor we want rid, the chair can turn around and say, nah, not bothered. MP level, different story. But even on the councillor level, if you've got enough pressure on there, they will cave. Now, assuming that you don't overstep the mark, like I say, the pressure that you do put on people at a council level, like I say, don't rely on them procedurally being pushed to resign or anything like that. But make sure that they have got the clear picture that if they want to remain as a councillor in any way, shape or form, that they do have to do what is being requested of them. But again, you need to be backing this up with and having the work package teams understand exactly what is all in the machinery that councillor is being faced with as well. Because it's quite easy to say, tell that councillor to say no. But then when you have to look at all of the legal bump from that and the millions of pages that get spewed out on purpose to prevent anybody from going against what has actually been passed down to them, you have to understand what position they're in as well. Maybe work with them is an idea. I say again, I dare say a lot of people will say this sort of stuff doesn't work, nobody will do it, blah blah blah. That's fine, you know, have those people just sit on their arse and get trampled on. That's your decision. But before anybody does think of giving up on this sort of stuff, just consider from the perspective of your opposition. How do you think they gained their position? By building up these structures, by building up this legislative barrier, by making sure that when somebody says that you have to do something, they've got a whole series of legalese documents, most of which make absolutely no bloody sense whatsoever, by the way. A whole bunch of this stuff and that they just throw at you to say, yeah, you'll give up. You'll give up. Don't. Be better than them. It literally is as simple as that. Be better than they are. Then, obviously, don't worry too much about what's on screen at the moment, because I'm not going to be going full on lizard people at this moment. I'm sure that many will be aware of this kind of pyramid by now anyway, and where, yes, we are the sheep at the bottom. But don't worry about who's at the top of the pyramid or anything like that, because those are the kind of weeds that you really just don't need to waste your time on for now. The point of this particular stage is that it's to demonstrate that there are organisations, not only within the country but from all around the world, that are all collectively supporting the kind of lunacy that we're supposed to be pushing back against. And it does include, as you can tell, our resident Germans. Every piece of their machinery is entirely dependent on the useful idiots that form the groups that you'll find that are behind various foundations and charities. And yes, I will include a certain Mr. Soros at this stage, because whilst many of you will know about the open society side of his little bit of an operation, I suspect there's not that many of you that are maybe you don't know about the other organisation called My Society, which is operating within the UK. And that's an organisation that looks quite a lot like what it is that I'm proposing here, but they do it from the lunatic side. They do try to present themselves as being very rational, but they're far from it. I'm not going to put links to that organisation in the description, by the way, because I don't want to promote them. But think of a slightly less smelly version of Momentum, if you remember them. They're basically the ones that at the moment, and that's they're sitting behind the likes of Daddy Issues Dave, otherwise known as Zach Polanski. These are the people that we're going to be coming up against, and they are very well organised. We need to have a similar level of organisation, at least. Once again, this might make you feel that this is all just insurmountable. But again, I remind you that these organisations have an awful lot of crossover. Where they try to make themselves look like they have one massive blob, it's not. It's the people from this organisation are the same as the people that are in this organisation, are the same as the ones that are in this organisation. Larger appearance, reality, quite a small group of people. If you was to have some sort of a consideration in terms of how powerful their ability to organise has been within the UK, I suppose the main examples would be the fact that that machine was put together to sit behind the Corbyn loss, and he won with a higher share of the vote than Starmer. So Starmer had 9.7 million, but that big group of the smellies and everybody else behind them, there's 3 million more that voted for the likes of Corbyn, and they can still be defeated. And that was on the basis of people not really fully understanding what this was all about at the time. There's far more people that do now. So the extent of impact that these organisations can have these days has been very much diminished. So is it an insurmountable task? No, it's not. What these people have literally collected themselves around and what it is that they're supporting is just not popular with the public at all, because we're starting to see the consequences and the impact of it. One of the main reasons why people would want to join your network is because they can see how bad things have become directly as a result of what these people do. I say they might think that they're the great controllers of the world, but they're certainly not. And I've had to include the resident Germans in this because I have heard suggestion that writing to old Charlie Boy might make some kind of a difference. To which I would have to kindly retort that any discomfort that he might feel at receiving numerous handwritten letters would likely just result in an immediate daily letter burning command. I doubt very much that he believes that there's any chance of him ending up in the same way as his namesake, Charles I. That's the level of uncaring that these people will have. They don't think that the past would ever catch up with them. Now, I certainly don't advocate for that kind of result, but it doesn't hurt to understand that Cromwell did give an example that we don't have to tolerate tyranny. Now, we do have the numbers, because all of the evidence tells me that we have the numbers, and I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't know this fact. So let's go back to the present situation and this English Devolution and Community Empowerment Bill, because it does tell us something that we need to understand. So this is the front page of the bill, and because I'm familiar with the guide to making legislation, which you can find in the links, I am more familiar with the principles of law as well, which don't tend to be within that guide. They conveniently avoid it. But there are two key principles which I always focus very much on, which are burden of proof and non-contravention. And what I do note from most all modern legislation is that there's always some assumption, really, that non-contravention is limited to the ECHR, which is just ludicrous, and it's certainly not the case. Any new law must not contravene any other law, not just the ECHR. So a good point of advice for any legal experts that you might utilise, or if you instruct any researchers to determine arguments that you can be making against certain types of legislation, one of the things that you can focus on is what levels of contravention are taking place. Is it overlapping with another existing law? So in regard to human rights, also take into the account that the fact that the UK is also a signatory to the UN Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And quite an important article in this respect is Article 17, and the right to own property. It does hold relevance within this bill. So this particular, quite frankly, divide and conquer bill, because that's what it is, has literally nothing to do with, oh, we're giving you more democracy, oh, we're putting democracy at the local level. Absolute, utter garbage. This is government putting through legislation where they hope that nobody understands anything, and they're hoping that nobody will notice anything. And one of the key impacts, or one of the key segments within legislation, not only the contravention side of things, but according to their guide to making legislation, you have things like the impact assessment as well. It's quite critical in this particular instance, because the divide and conquer part is actually just a small part of this bill. Because considering this is effectively the very reason why they are cancelling local elections at the moment, there are areas of just being able to argue that cancelling local elections in preparation for a bill that has not yet been passed, that in and of itself is unlawful. But this particular law itself and the impact assessment side of things is something worth taking into consideration in terms of wider arguments, because the larger part of this bill is actually more to do with on-street micro-mobility, the community right to buy, sporting assets of community value, and upwards only rent review bans. Not quite much to do with English devolution, really, is it, that you would commonly associate. So these are the areas that we can look towards something of a consequence, and something that I dare say people would be able to understand if they knew exactly what was in this. But they're trying to look towards being able to create something where they can say that they've got some level of plausible deniability built into it, and that it's gone through all of the correct processes. But just to give you a bit of an example in terms of consequence, which is something that should be part of your impact assessment, just consider the micromobility side of things, where we've got this rather odd looking overall impact. Because apparently when something is uncertain, that is now somehow seen as a positive. I don't quite get how that works. They are literally turning around and saying, well, what's going to happen if you do this? And I don't know. And, oh, okay, then that's good enough for me. Considering the rest of it is either negative or, it's fine and dandy then. Let's go forward with that, shall we? I think we might have a bit of an argument to make around that type of proposition. In terms of when I mentioned previously around like the impact of the taxis, where I used a short picture from it, there's a fella called Andy the Gabby Cabby. I'll put a link to his specific video in the description, and he's talking about the impact that it's having to the taxi service. And so obviously they are implementing barriers in this district in Thanet, and this is a policy that they are about to pass through the House of Lords, where they've completely avoided the fact that they were looking towards killing off the private hire industry, because they want to push kiddie scooters and silly little e-bikes on the public instead. You know, do that in the middle of a cold English winter rather than a comfortable vehicle made for adults. This is the kind of nonsense that we are now dealing with, and that is going to be making up a good part of your 2026. You're looking to something that is going to be losing yet more jobs in local markets, and have crappy little kiddie toys that demand yet more energy, all owned by the usual suspects, by the way. And how is that supposed to be a good thing for people? Well, by their own definition, it's a nonsense. Oh, I'm going to need to refill that in a minute. Where this will progress is that it will actually then start to move forward into genuine privately owned vehicles as well. And this is where your UN Declaration of Human Rights is going to start coming into play, if it doesn't already apply in terms of private hire cars. Because I do notice that the high cost of maintaining vehicles with the now short lifespans that they're going to be limiting you to. So like I think it's with the taxis, they're limiting the vehicle to being 7 years, no more than 7 years old. That seems to be quite conveniently chosen as a number, really, doesn't it? 7 years, considering the average life of an EV battery is 8 years. Yeah. This is literally the sneaky way. We might backtrack on this EV mandate, but your car won't be allowed on the road anyway. Wouldn't it be better to get an EV, because you can own it for longer though. They do all manner of sneaky things. Now, to just go swiftly through the rest of these ones, because we're not been going on for long enough as it is already. But you've got the community right to buy is simply giving councils the right of first refusal, meaning businesses in particular are going to be forced into reduced valuations. You're looking at sport assets in community value, same problem. And this upwards only rent review ban is literally just rent controls. This is drifting very much into the tried and failed territory across the board. And you're going to need to be locally organised in order to be able to fight this immediate issue. The reason why you're going to have to do that, as if you needed yet more reason, is you will notice there has not been a single party, not a single member of parliament that has been discussing this on any level with the wider public. Which means that obviously then you're having your local elections being postponed in readiness for this. And all anybody is saying is going, oh, can you do that? Can you do that? But why don't you actually bother your arse to look as to whether they can do that and what it is they're doing it for, rather than just going, can you do that? Nobody in Parliament is making mention as to why. And this is why. The fact that you've got that situation means that you've got all the more reason to seek your own representation. People that are actually looking out for you. So again, in order to do this, you need to be making the case that not only is things like this, and there's a whole range of other stuff in that I could run through with this as well, but this impact assessment, like with a great many other areas of legislation, is not an impact assessment. By any level of standards in competency, this is not an impact assessment. This is just complete and utter drivel. This is like something that was like a sixth form project. This is farcical. Get your constituency together. Get people that understand what a competent assessment is. Because this is not enough. These areas of legislation that don't understand non-contravention, don't understand how to create an impact assessment, and certainly don't understand burden of proof, these are not legitimate pieces of legislation. One of the things when it comes down to private property is the right to sell to whoever you want, within a realistic limitation of the domestic market, you might be able to say, but you do not have this first right of refusal, basically saying you're going to sell to the government because we want to take ownership of everything. No, that's not the way the world works. There should not be this level of impediment on people. There should not be this level of contravention by some local commissar. You should not have your ability to profit from any sale being prevented, or indeed your ability to just rent based on market conditions. They should not be controlled by government. And if you do bother to look into the history of things like rent controls, you will see that it is an abject failure. You're going to end up with higher costs because most people are just not going to, they won't put the properties out to rent. The rental market will collapse. It's very well known to be an idiot policy, but then we are dealing with idiot people. But again, this is all part of understanding the failings of a command and control economy. And it's not anybody that says, oh, well, we're pushing back against the capitalist system. Doesn't exist. Doesn't exist. Go away. Shut up. They want to reduce your mobility. They want to reduce your access to the property market. Remember, I put up the C40 cities thing, which old William Boy, those people that seem to think that he's going to be better than Charlie Boy. No, he's not. C40 cities is very much about your, and again, not a conspiracy theory, 15-minute cities. When your ability to move around has been vastly impacted. Where you're able to live has been vastly impacted. The level of employment has been vastly controlled. You will be in a 15-minute city before you know it. The more people you can gain in your network that understand this kind of really quite basic fundamentals, the better. And then the better you'll be able to push back against it. Until such time, at least until the house is actually returned to us that it belongs to. But in the interim, there has been another suggestion. Sorry for going on for too long on that, but I did say I wanted to try to fit in a proper, detailed, relatively detailed explanation as to what it is that we can do. But the latest suggestion, here comes old Peter McCormack and his I no longer consent. Government is broken, I no longer consent. I have absolutely no idea what this is supposed to achieve. Sorry Peter mate, but no, I don't get this. Apparently you're supposed to all have some sort of collective chants and language, and don't comply with government talking points, but then you still have to comply with whatever government says at the same time somehow, because you can't go against whatever the legal situation that has been dictated to you. And apparently if you do this sort of thing, and that somehow by, I don't know, by osmosis or something, that the government will become illegitimate. I've got no idea what this is supposed to be about. Frankly, if the whole country did indeed follow exactly what this says, honestly, the government wouldn't know the difference. they'd probably just sit back and go, yeah, whatever. I find this kind of stuff and that to be, I mean, I've seen it before, and I do find it incredibly pointless. I mean, you know, could I try to be generous and say, well, you know, he's trying to figure things out, and he wants to try to do something. You're a grown adult man. You know this is not going to do anything. Come off it. So here's a couple of examples of non-compliance for you, or an example of non-compliance. I had my road tax bill sent through, and they have kindly demanded that I have to pay them £760 for 1 year. Now, I was already more than irritated from the fact that, I mean, since 5 years ago, I think it is, and that, I mean, this is going up and up and up and up from £600, which was too much already. And it was £735 last year. Now, last year I did turn around and write a letter and go, what on earth are you doing? But I didn't push it in the right way, because even at that point in that, I wasn't fully aware as to how exactly I was going to deal with this. But I'm certainly done with this sort of nonsense now. So I decided to look at how these bills are supposed to be calculated, what it is that they're supposed to be based upon. And obviously it's all about the CO2 emissions, the deadly CO2, the plant food. And the problem that I came across quite quickly is that there's I made an example of about 20 different vehicles that have higher emissions than mine. And it included one vehicle that had almost double the emissions of mine. And that particular vehicle was being charged £180. So my non-compliance is based on dispute. I've written to them, I've shown them the example, and I've said, I want you to give me some kind of a logical explanation as to exactly how the hell that works. Your policy is based on how much CO2 you claim comes out of the tailpipe, and on that basis you're charging somebody that has double the CO2 £180, and you're charging me 760. Explain. Dispute. You could apply this across a whole range of different tax demands, really, couldn't you? I have seen people talk in the past around the council tax and how you don't necessarily have to pay council tax. You can actually go through as well and say, well, no, you don't just send me a demand. I want an itemised bill. And dispute it. No, I'm not paying. We'll have a dispute about this. We'll come to reach an agreement. You don't get to just dictate to me. And when you get an itemised bill, I mean, you will never get it from a government, but you can certainly ask for it. But you can turn around and say, right, I've checked according to your figures, and I've checked on your expenditure that Rachel from accounts has produced, and then I've noticed that there's this rather large amount of money that is there to cater for third world ponces that have literally just turned up. I'm not paying for that. Ask all of the NGOs that have been complicit in bringing them. Let them have the courage of their conviction. They can pick up my part of the tab, because I'm not paying for that. I've noticed that you're giving yet more billions to little Mr. Money Laundering Zelensky. I don't fund wars. No, sorry, I'm not paying for that. Take that off the bill. A whole range of different things where you can, never mind I don't consent, it's I dispute. It's supposed to be a democracy, right? I say, send me an itemised bill and I'll let you know what I will and won't pay for. Don't just play mafia games of saying, no, here's the bill. It'd be a shame if something happened to you if you didn't pay it. I said, no, you itemise it for me and I'll let you know what I'm going to pay for. The one that's quite obvious that many people do obviously know a lot more by now, and I guarantee there's an awful lot of people that this is going to be quite difficult for, and that because you're going to have especially the football lads, I need me live football. But stop watching all of the mainstream media and turn around and say, okay, I don't need a TV anymore. I'm not paying the TV licence. Same principle. I don't do the TV licence either. I am one of the people that has been having letters and letters and letters and letters and letters, and I've been ignoring all of it. I have had a recent letter that says, I'm going to be coming around and visiting your property. Best of luck, mate. There's a reason why you have to write to this property saying, to the legal occupier. Because GDPR, mate, I've told you, I don't want my information on there either. When you come knocking on my door and you have to say, are you the legal occupier? I say, yes, I am. And the fact that you have to address me in that way lets you know that I've already told you I don't need a fucking licence. Bye-bye. It's not a matter of saying, I no longer consent. It's a matter of, what is it you're not going to consent with? And what are the strategies that you're going to use to no longer consent? Merely having something written online saying, I don't consent, to a post put up by a government useful idiot that doesn't actually post by themselves anyway, it's done by some junior staffer, and nobody reads your comments. Do something with impact. And again, if you've got your network together, and you've got your research team together, what is it that you can actually do on the basis of law, including especially common law? What can you do? Don't just say, I no longer consent. Say, I dispute. I say, by all means, with this kind of proposition that Peter McCormack has put together, if it means that people are going to start getting together in groups, I mean, I don't like the idea of this, I'll just have small groups, because small groups can't do anything. Create the bigger network. And like I say, this is something that I've been saying since 2021. And you need to have more purpose than consent. You generally use the term of consent when you're talking about the police, not the government. Be a little bit more thoughtful about these things. This is why I've got a bit of an issue with the commentariat type of people. It's either no solution at all complaints, or here's a solution. It's like, I mean, I was glad to see that. I think he put out a video I think it was last night. And when he turned around and was explaining to the camera and said, "Oh, this is my idea," and I said, "No longer consent," and even his son turned around and said, "Then what?" Because it doesn't answer the question. So, understand that those of us making these suggestions are trying to avoid the pitchfork situation. Like I say, my main gripe with the pitchfork situation is that you always end up causing more damage to our properties and cost to us, rather than whoever it is that you're supposed to be angry with. The pitchfork crowd do not have the laser focus of a Ukrainian rent boy. I am, however, not so gullible as to think that this might not be an inevitable, it could be an inevitable consequence considering the direction of travel. But personally, I do think, they are doing things to provoke us to realise this. Because if they get that kind of an outcome, it does give them the excuse that they need for and again, I keep saying this, it gives them the excuse to put the jackboot down. But what I'm also aware of is the narrative of you can't vote your way out of this. I hear that too much as well. And I do think that, I think even Peter McCormack said the same thing. That I find to be a hugely defeatist mentality. I cannot agree with this notion of you cannot vote your way out of this. And the reason why I can't go along with that narrative is because you haven't tried yet. Honestly, you haven't tried. You haven't put yourselves on the ballot, that's why. It's literally just been, here's a bunch of different parties that are all going to do the exact same thing. There's your choice. And none of you have gone, that's not the choice that I want, so I'm going to find the choice that I want. That has not been tried. Not on a national level. One of the other, up until recent years at least, it's just been this demoralisation and everybody's going, oh God, all the isms that I keep being called and all the rest of it. But the longest standing narrative was that the people of Britain put the great into Britain. And historically speaking, based on the achievements that we've done, I mean, we fundamentally made the modern world. All the greatest inventions and conventions and everything that people depend on around the world today, a very, very large part of that comes from us. And on that understanding, I don't really see why we should continue to be sitting on our arse and letting this being done to us by some ideologue wussies. So this is us, and it is time to remember that. And if you're half the people that I think you are, then I don't think this should be a problem for you. The young people out there that seem to think that they have no purpose anymore, they've got nothing nothing to really aim for apart from checking their underpants to see what sex they are today. This is a much more substantial purpose for you to have in your life. Play the role, and as the network involves businesses, have the businesses being shown the young people's value to them, so that they can turn around and say, no, I'm not going to comply with all of your DEI crap. I'm seeing a whole bunch of young people that are now looking towards making the nation better and being able to enable my business to do better. And it's going to be because I've got a whole crowd of young people showing how eager they are. Have that network present that kind of reality, so they don't have to hire the latest bloody Bamalian that's come over. Make them understand the value of an employee, not just the cost. Because cost of employment is a lifetime cost, not just a fixed cost during this particular financial year. It's a lifetime cost. Which one provides the most value? The young people present that value. It's up to you to present that value. This could be a path for you to be able to do that. And then the other parts of that, which is much more fundamental, is that when it comes down to the young people, understand you will be running the nation one day. And us older people need to understand that as well. And when you have all of these morons that want to berate the young people at the schools in particular, so, oh, don't be misogynist, don't be this, don't be that, don't be racist, don't be... Just berating them constantly. When you get older, can you imagine the level of animosity that is going to be building up amongst those people, amongst those youngsters? And when you're old and they're in charge, and they're going to look at you and go, I remember you, I remember what you did. Older people, wake up. There's a reason why you're supposed to look after the young, because they will be looking after you one day, or not, as the case may be. Again, for the businesses of the country, I can't stand this notion of you waiting for the government to say, oh, we are now funding the, oh God, what's it called? We're funding a program and that, so you can take in young people for 6 months. You don't need to wait for government to do that. Do it your bloody self. Train them yourself. Have a contract with them yourself. And you can do the contract where you have a conversation with these youngsters and say, obviously I can't afford to pay you XYZ amount until I understand that you can actually produce to that value. Let's have a contract amongst each other. Doesn't need to involve the entire wider world. We'll do something on the understanding that we will bring you forward, and if you can provide the capability to us, we will take you on. Don't wait for government funding to tell you that. It's the way that it always used to be. Apprentice, that's it. Apprenticeships. Don't involve government in these things. It's your company. You should be deciding who's coming in, and you should be prepared to invest in them. You don't wait for government to do that. And when the younger people see that you're prepared to invest in them, guess what? They then know that you're serious. They know that you're not just being, oh, let's have the local lad come in and that for 6 months, make us a cup of tea, government's paying for it, we don't care. Well, guess what? The young person isn't going to care either, is he? But that's why they do that. Understand, command and control. Everybody has got to be understanding how things. It's not a case of thinking back to how things were as if everything in the garden was rosy before. It's a matter of understanding what worked, what gave people some purpose. We have to understand that when it comes down to the younger people, if we want them to grow up to be the kind of men we want our society to be based on, not all this thug life nonsense and all that rap crap and that that came in from, when was it, from the 90s or whatever. Absolute nonsense. We're the ones that are supposed to be teaching them how to become real men with real responsibility, not just for themselves but for their families and for the wider community. And that's not talking about going, right, we need all of these men and that's all be this collective same person and basically replicating yet another socialist nonsense, but making sure that you're in a safe society and that people do understand their responsibilities within society. These things never used to be a difficult conversation, but they're plainly having to be relearned again. So all of this stuff, and that feeds into your network as well. The young people are going to be an important part of this. And the way to consider it is that these types of things will be a downstream positive consequence if we act accordingly. So it's saving and bringing back the nation to becoming our house, but it's also making sure that our house is a stable house for the kids, and we know that we'll have brought them up to be responsible householders. I suppose just at the end here, and that's, I mean, obviously that I always finish off with me little promo for me company. I mean, if there's anybody in the East Thanet constituency that wants to get involved in something like this, then let me know, because like I said, that's the constituency that I'm in. And if anybody else anywhere wants to have a little bit of advice, that's fine. You know, feel free to write some comments or whatever, or there's contact details in the description. Just be realistic in terms of how much I can do for everyone, as far as this is concerned. And I mean, it's not as if there's many people actually bother to watch or respond to any of this anyway. As I mean, I've been doing this for 4 or 5 years, and I keep having to repeat myself because it's just not getting through yet. Maybe this time, because I'm giving you something to watch on Christmas Day. Was kind of the purpose. But from a business perspective, obviously there's parts of this where I can help certain businesses to be able to take this stuff into consideration as well, but on the basis that you understand that I'm not a charity. What I can say insofar as anything that is related to this and that is working with businesses, I certainly can be very reasonable. I'm not going to be, like I say, I won't do the lawyer thing and that of charging you the earth for 2 minutes of something that you already knew. I am also prepared to make sure that, depending on how it goes, and that's, I mean, I would apply economies of scale to this as well, because the more help that I can provide to the businesses that are interested in doing something along these lines, then the more I can reduce the cost to each individual client, because I'm not one of these people that needs to build up some great big war chest. My needs are relatively few. I don't need to take the piss. The main thing is that we all get in the game that we do answer the then what question, that we know what to do when we get in office. We know how to make the nation better and to make the nation ours. And I will be very specific about that, ours. Not turning Britain into central Somalia. England will be English. Same with Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland. So, as a Christmas ending, because obviously I have my normal ending sequence that I put up, but I decided this time to add a particular song that has been doing the rounds of late. I don't know exactly who it was that created this. Well, it's an AI created thing anyway, but I've added a link in the description to who I believe it was that was responsible, and certainly where I found it from. And so stick around and enjoy that, just for the last little bit. But in the meantime, I hope you've been having a really nice Christmas day. I hope you've been going to enjoy whatever holiday it is that you have got. And let's see you all rise to the challenge in 2026. Okay. Thanks for watching. Take care now. Bye-bye.
It was Christmas in Whitehall. Lord Ollie had just dropped in with a sack full of gifts and cash in a tin. He gave Key a Rolex, gave Vicky some knickers, then lit up a Cuban, raised a glass to his arse liquors. Down the road from their feasting, by a boarded up door, a soldier lay shaking on a piss-soaked floor. He fought for this country, he gave them his all. Now he begs for his dinner, 'cause his country let him fall.
She was 12 when it started. No one heard her cries. They labeled her trouble and said she told lies in the name of diversity. They looked the other way while monsters kept hunting their prey every day.
Claimed you were different, said you'd fight for the poor, but you kissed every ring to walk through number 10's door. You once marched for the miners, now you side with the whiners. Now you serve foreign masters and bow to the bastards. The old folk are dying while you keep on lying, and our cash is given out to the chosen few. You're a lie, you're a boy, you're a globalist whore. You robbed all our grannies and left them to freeze. You're a joke, you're a tool, you're an embarrassing fool. Merry Christmas, you wanker, now get out the way. The old folk are dying, still you keep lying, and our cash is given out to the chosen few. You lied to our faces, said we'd have a say, but they spit on our flag. and cursed Christmas Day. He sold out the nation, then called us all thugs, whilst the boats keep on coming. Don't take us for mugs. The people are rising as your party is dying, and the bells will ring out. We're coming for you. Yeah, we're coming for you. Yeah, we're coming for you.